In this episode, we will be discussing how to screen tenants for fake IDs. This video is brought to you by realserious.com, where you can screen tenants 24 hours a day. You would be surprised how many prospective tenants apply for a rental property using someone else's identification and then seamlessly get approved by unsuspecting landlords. There is substantial fraud in the property management industry, with thousands of tenants each year claiming to be someone they are not. Just imagine the friendliest face who introduces herself as Jane from Clarksville. She drives a typical sedan, keeps a neat appearance, and loves to talk about her wonderful son and 2 dogs. But she's not actually Jane. She's Jill from Ashland, who loves to buy the cutest little puppies and gifts for her son, using other people's credit cards. She's an okay tenant at first for a few months, until she decides that cash should be prioritized for other things instead of paying rent and utilities. By the time a landlord deals with the excuses and decides to file with the court, it's usually up to 3 months of free living and a neglected rental. This happens to not only first-time landlords but seasoned property managers, and we know for a fact because we hear the stories. So it's important to follow these steps to avoid getting duped by a tenant using a stolen identity. The first step is to always meet face-to-face with each adult when accepting an application. It seems simple, right? But meeting face-to-face actually forces low-level fraudsters out of the shadows, and that's where they don't like to play because they probably stole a wallet or a purse and couldn't change the photo. So a common scam is to utilize a partner where one person will approach the landlord, maybe it's a wife for example, who doesn't work. She views the property and then takes an application back so her husband can complete it. He'll provide his identification information and then she'll drop it off later, or maybe she'll email it back. And that's the beginning of you getting duped. But we're not going to let that happen now, right? On to step 2. Ask to see their driver license and SSN card. These go hand in hand, so don't accept one without the other, and be sure to physically inspect them, front and back, and then take a photo for your records. If they refuse to, or make up a story about how they lost either of those items or will email you copies later, we suggest telling them you'll wait to process their application until they receive replacements and are able to present them in person. Never let an applicant or your vacancy pressure you into letting your tenant screening protocol slide. Now, once you receive their ID, on to step 3. Compare the address on the applicant's driver license to their current or previous address on their rental application. It must match one of the two, and if you're not collecting both, you should modify your application before your next vacancy. While this is not always indicative of a problem, DMV records are required to be updated within 30 days in most states, and those who fail to update tend to be the type that are open to at least bending the law, if not fully breaking it. Now there's one final step where you can confirm you're dealing with the very person that the applicant claims to be. It involves pulling their consumer credit file, but not in the traditional way of pulling it yourself by typing in their name, address, date of birth, and social security number. After all, anyone can take that information from a trash can. There's a newer platform in the industry that requires the applicant to first provide their own information and then second, pass a 3 or 4 question identity exam before their credit file is released. This exam service is now being used by several tenant screening companies, including realserious.com, which automatically includes it for every tenant screening, and it's been very successful at tripping up the identity thieves because they are unable to pass the exam. This isn't an instance where they can just pull information from a trash can and expect to successfully answer questions. They're actually going to need to know information about an applicant's past. So at this point, you may be wondering about the high-level professional fraudsters that, instead of stealing identification, they actually create a fictionalized person and history, complete with a driver license, SSN card, and credit file, just like in the movies. Well, you don't have to worry too much about your applicants being that sophisticated. because those high-level fraudsters don't want to jeopardize the years it takes to create their fake credit file just to swindle a few months' rent out of a landlord. You see, they spend years grooming their fictionalized person so they can commit high-level crimes like tax evasion and large financial schemes such as mortgage fraud, where they can walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars from a single transaction. But don't worry about what you see in the movies, because the real threat is right before you. The use of stolen identification is rampant across the United States. Just remember Jill. And don't forget about Jack. If you would like to see more videos about being an American landlord, please like and subscribe.